Today we're taking a look at a budget-friendly entry-level force feedback steering wheel from Logitech. So this is the G29 for the PlayStation variant and the G920 for the Xbox variant. Both wheels are identical and both work on the PC. There are some minor differences that we'll talk about, but if for all effects and purposes, this is the same steering wheel. And first impressions out of the box are actually pretty good. It's very robustly constructed. It's an all aluminium frame and construction, including the paddles, the main frame of the wheel, and it's covered actually in some fairly reasonable real leather that appears to be hand-stitched. The wheel's a little bit smaller than I would like, but actually, as you get more into the game, you forget about that more and more. A little frustrating is the fact that they haven't included the gear shifter as standard. You have got the paddle shifters on the steering wheel, but if you want the H shifter, that is an additional purchase, only about £30, $30, depending on your geography, but a little bit disappointing that that wasn't included in the box. And the front of the unit's clearly styled on a bonnet. It's got all the right kind of aesthetics, etc. It's got a pretty reasonable clamping system as well for you to be able to attach it to your desk. It will accommodate a pretty thick desk. I've got an IKEA countertop and a kitchen countertop. That's a thick desk. This went on okay. There's a couple of rubber feet you can remove if you've got thicker desks. But I definitely found after a few hours of simming that started to get dislodged. It's a relatively robust fixture to the desk, but using some M6 bolts to attach it to a sim rig was like night and day, particularly with the H shifter as well. The pedals, actually, for this price point, I would say are pretty good. You have got variable tension between the pedals, by which I mean some of the pedals have more resistance when you push on them than others. The accelerator is the easiest to push, followed then by the clutch pedal, which has slightly more resistance, clearly a stronger spring in there, and the brake pedal has the most resistance, heaviest spring, and actually offers more resistance the further in that you push it. This is trying to simulate the kind of response that you would get from a real brake pedal in a real car. Essentially what they've done is insert a squishy rubber block inside the spring, so when the pedal is about halfway depressed, you're pushing onto that rubber block. Now, it's not very linear. It kind of goes from a spring to a rubber block, and that feels a bit odd, and certainly you can't push the pedal all the way down, but at this price point, can't complain. I know some people have found that a little frustrating. Actually, they've removed the rubber block, but a load cell it is not. But actually, on the whole, the pedals are pretty good. Steering wheel itself actually feels pretty nice, very easy to get set up. The unit uses some real decrepit serial port type connections that I don't think I've seen since the early 1990s, but it does have some quite thoughtful cable management that makes sure that if any of the cables get tugged on, it's not tugging directly on that port. Effectively has like a plastic island that you can wrap the cables around to give a little bit of protection. There's some nice channel conduits that you can run them through as well to make them come out tidily out through the front of the unit. And then it's a simple download of some software. The steering wheel self-calibrates itself, and then all the major A-list games, things like Project Cars 2, Dirt 2.0 and stuff like that, it has a standard set of profiles for this steering wheel. It picks it up straight away. It's, you're straight in the game. There's no faffing around. There's no intricate sort of detailed configurations as you might have with some of the more expensive sim rigs. Instantly you can feel that there's some heft to this steering wheel. It feels like there's resistance as you're turning against it. There's a couple of motors providing that resistance within the steering wheel, and that felt good. What I also noticed that as you turn the steering wheel, it's not completely smooth. Now, essentially what this does is use a gearing system with some teeth on it to provide the resistance against the steering wheel. And as you turn the steering wheel, you can feel what I'm going to describe as like micro judders. That as you turn the steering wheel, it's not unsmooth. Don't misunderstand me. It's not like completely inconsistent as you turn it round. It's smooth in as much that it turns consistently, but you can feel those micro judders of the teeth running against each other. That actually is something that I forgot about over a period of time. Initially I noticed it, but as I got more and more and more immersed into the game, I noticed that less and less. And as I got immersed into the game, that's when this steering wheel really did start to come into its own. I significantly underestimated just how much it would improve intuitively what you understood to be going on with the car. As you oversteer, as you come out of a corner, you feel the steering wheel trying to snatch away from you. As you understeer out of a corner, you can feel the resistance pulling the steering wheel back, and you have to fight against it to pull it in. And I've only got the I guess the resistance or the configuration, the calibration of the amount of force feedback only at about 40-45%. So you can rank this up even more if you want to, but that felt like sufficient feedback in the game sessions I was doing. And this is hard work, right? I was getting quite warm. I mean, it's quite warm in the UK. We're having a warm April, which is lovely. It's a shame we're in lockdown still, but you work up a sweat. You know, this is quite an activity. It's an active activity. It's not like sitting in front of a screen just with your controller. You have to fight against the resistance of this thing. And this thing was at its most phenomenal in the wet. You've got that oversteering, understeering thing going on in a more pronounced and profound way. But the thing I was most impressed with was the feeling when the track has got lots of water on it. You actually start to feel the car aquaplaning as you're going across the track. You could feel the back of the car actually starting to move out, and instinctively, intuitively, I was lifting up off the accelerator or changing gear as a way of just shifting the weight around in the car to stop the backsliding out as you aquaplane on the puddles. That was sensational. You can feel the rumble of strips as you come across the apex at the end of the beginning of entering a corner or at the end of coming out of a corner, and it's substantially improved the immersion within the game. Combine that with a virtual reality headset, a decent sim rig, so that you're set up in what feels like an intuitive position to be driving a car. You could lose yourself in Project Cars 2 for hours, and indeed I did. The immersion is sensational. My wife couldn't do it at all. It made her feel ill. She suffers very badly with motion sickness, but agreed it felt substantially real when you're in this game, and it's definitely fair to say this improved my driving. There is no doubt the lap times were faster. Empirically, objectively, the lap times were faster. It just made the game so much more fun to play. Definitely make sure if you invest the couple of $100 or couple of £100 in this that you mount the solution well. Having a steering wheel that shifts around is definitely going to spoil the experience that you're going to have. A couple of niggles. From my perspective, we've talked about the roughness of the gearing as you turn the wheel. That's the number one niggle. I also would have liked the steering wheel to have been a little bit bigger. And despite the shift paddles on the steering wheel being made of what feels like pretty reasonable and decent metal, the tactile switches underneath them as you change gear just feel really underwhelming and disappointing. There's no decent clunk as you change gears as you would expect to find in a reasonable car. It just feels quite flimsy. And I'm not a big fan of the blue and red aesthetic. It feels a little bit childish. The The Xbox variant of this, the G920, has less buttons. It doesn't have the shift indicator on the top either, but it looks cleaner in my opinion. If you can pick this up for sub $200, sub £200, and it's definitely been listed on Amazon at those price points in the past, this really is actually very good value for money. Definitely a great first steering wheel as you embark on your sim racing career. I can't give it a 5 out of 5 stars just because of those niggles and the roughness of the gearing system as you turn it, but it's most definitely a solid 4 out of 5. Highly recommended, will deepen the immersion of your sim racing, and definitely represents great value for money. So there we go, guys. The Logitech G29 or G920, depending on your PlayStation or Xbox variants. Both will work on the PC. Highly recommended steering wheel. As always, I hope you're really well wherever in the world you are. Please like and share, and I will see you in my next one.